talking about Web3 hackathons, just like generally like what they are, like what to expect, especially for this one coming up. So hopefully you're fully prepared for the weekend coming up. The first thing I wanted to touch on is Web 2 versus Web 3. You might be hearing the term Web 3 a lot, but do you actually know what that means? And this slide, I want you guys to really think about and understand like what is the difference that we're talking about here? Why is it useful? Why are we talking about this? So Web 2 is kind of like a standard tech stack that you would use at like any industry job. So JavaScript and then a framework using JavaScript is called React. So you might use React. MongoDB, which is like a database platform, AWS, you could do basically anything on AWS, but it's Web 2. Vercel is like a hosting platform, kind of like AWS, and then like programming languages, Python, really anything in the tech space that's not blockchain related. But when we move into Web3, we talk about blockchain. So like this idea of having a distributed, immutable ledger of data. So whether it's transaction, image data, whatever it is. So there's some paradigms of this, like IPFS, which is a file sharing protocol. And why I have Pinata right in the middle is because Pinata is both a Web 2 and Web 3 service. Their Web 3 service is IPFS pinning, so they pin files using the IPFS protocol. Web 2, they store the files. They use AWS. They store files. They have a React front end on their website. They have a lot of Web 2 components, and this is what your guys' projects are probably going to be. They're not going to be all the way on the Web 3 side completely, all the way on the Web 2 side. They're going to be kind of somewhere in the middle because you're going to use all sorts of technologies in your projects. As you can see, Autonomous, Polygon, those are blockchains. The Graph is an indexing service using a blockchain. And then Fleek is like a hosting service using IPFS. And then IPFS is what I just talked about, the file sharing protocol. Any questions about like Web 2 versus Web 3? Awesome. Well, this is like some like responses that we got to like a quiz that we gave to some people on like what is Web 2 versus Web 3. I mean, sorry, we're on layer 1 versus layer 2 blockchains. This is a different topic, but this is some responses that we gave to from students that we asked like, what is your idea of what the difference is between L1 and L2 blockchains? And L1, an example of this would be like Ethereum, for example, or Bitcoin. And those are kind of like the main blockchain network. And then L2s are kind of built off that blockchain network. L2s provide scalability solutions. It helps with doing rollups. So you kind of take a bunch of transactions and you ship them off to the L1 service. So an example of an L2 for Ethereum is Polygon. Polygon is an L2. And then off of Ethereum, so transactions on Polygon are eventually transmitted on the Ethereum mainnet network. And these are more examples. You didn't talk about that.
Yeah, so some of these layer ones, Bitcoin, you've probably all heard of. Ethereum, also pretty common, but also Autonomous is actually one of the sponsors for the event. It's not super well known about, but it is a very powerful tool to use. For layer twos, Polygon, like you said, built off of Ethereum, but then this one on the right, the orange one is called Stacks, which is actually built off of Bitcoin. It's kind of like this new thing. For a long time, Bitcoin really was only a layer one, but now people are starting to build on it. And then this last one, you want to talk about the last one?
Arbitrum's an L2 off of the Ethereum network, so kind of like Polygon. You're going to be using probably one of these chains in your projects, whether it's Polygon or whether it's Ethereum test nets. So you're going to be just kind of getting familiar with how to use these certain blockchains and definitely reviewing the What Are Smart Contracts tutorial from Pinata that we had last week. Definitely review that in preparation for the event. Kind of maybe even build your own smart contract before this weekend starts to kind of get familiar with how to use a blockchain network and what that looks like under the hood. Anyone can answer this question for me. I don't have the answer on the slides. And if you're in the Zoom, you can feel free to chat your answer. Yes, Tej.
Test nets are like playgrounds where you don't pay real money to access the blockchain tokens.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good explanation. They're what you're going to be using to build your projects. We don't want you guys spending real money to make your projects. So there, you're not going to be using real Ethereum, no real money. You're going to be using test nets. So when you go to a faucet online, it'll drip testnet tokens. So it might drip, like if you use Polygon, it might drip pool, which is their native token, something like that. So you're going to use test nets that have like basically free money built into it instead of using the main net. And now we're going to go into a little bit about our hackathon projects to give you guys some inspo about like what you could maybe build this weekend.
Right, yeah. So these are some things I made. This first one on the left, ETH Gambit. It's kind of like a decentralized chess betting platform that me and Wolfgang over there built in San Francisco. We won about $2,500 from it. It's a very simple project, but it shows like with a good idea and some fine tuning, you can really make a big impact, and the judges like seeing that kind of thing. On the right was a another project I built for a hackathon that was like a kind of like a research assistant that you'd put on a website, and it helps to like you can select data and then put it through different actions, which helps with research and things like that. The bottom right is a picture of us at San Francisco at this hackathon. So it was really a cool experience and a couple great projects.
Awesome. For my projects, I kind of separated them out by the hackathon that I went to. So in East San Francisco, just what Caleb was mentioning, we all built like some sort of projects. I worked with Emma on this project. We built kind of a web browser extension that you would pull down. We used the Story protocol, which is an L1, a layer one blockchain that allows you to mint like any intellectual property on the chain. So on the blockchain. So whether it's text, images, files, whatever you want. So we basically made a browser extension where you would go onto your like Word document or whatever page you're working on, highlight your text, and then it would mint it to the Story protocol. We used Polygon to kind of mint any like the actual data, like so like the text data, and then Story protocol would mint the hash of the Polygon data, so like where it is on the Polygon network, and then the licensing details. So Story protocol has like a built-in licensing capabilities where you can do like who owns this. Unfortunately, they're not sponsoring our hackathon, but if you do use Story protocol in one of your projects, you're still absolutely eligible for a bounty on the general track. And you can combine Pinata and Story protocol and then be also eligible for the Pinata sponsor track. This is what I made at HackKU 2024. I used Ripple XRPL. They're not doing a sponsor track, but once again, you can use XRPL, Ripple's blockchain on your project. So what my project was, essentially you'd create a product and it would turn it into it would put it on the XRPL network, mint it, and it would turn it into a QR code. So you'd scan the QR code on the website and it would come up with the product. So it's basically like a replacement for barcodes. You wouldn't have to use like barcodes anymore, because I just think that barcodes, like they only store like 10 to 12 digits on there. They're kind of useless. When you have QR codes, then you can have NFTs as the QR code. Sorry, this was the XRPL EVM sidechain, so you can actually use NFTs. XRPL, like the native chain, does not support like smart contracts, but their EVM sidechain, which is like an Ethereum compatible chain, does support smart contracts, which is how I was able to mint these as NFTs. And then for Eigengames, just a few weeks ago, I worked with Nishay. He's on our exec team. And we built out like this zero knowledge proof system for insurance claims. So you kind of mint out, this is the what I have, because we don't have much of a front end. We didn't have much of a front end built out, but we did have kind of the architecture and the code built out. We used EigenLayer, which is the sponsor of that hackathon, so we had to use them. And then we used Ethereum's Arbitrum, which is the layer 2, as we mentioned before, to kind of build out this. But one mistake that I made during this project is that I waited until the hackathon started to make the design for it. I think we could have won more prizes if we started thinking about the design. I mean, we did win a couple big prizes, but I think we could have won more if we started the design prior to the hackathon, which wasn't illegal in that hackathon specifically. Always check the rules. It's not illegal in this one. So you won't get disqualified if you do like the design. We'll talk about it later, but you can't do the code base. So specifically for this hackathon, I can't remember. Yes.
Yeah, so a few things this weekend that we're kind of looking forward to. There's gonna be some really good food there. A ping pong tournament with like a gift card prize.
What kind of food is gonna be there, Caleb?
Oh yeah. So we're gonna. I actually got all the sponsors for the food. So we got like Hawaiian Bros, tacos, donuts, Mad Greek, yeah, boba, yeah. So all of that like completely free.
And then we'll have like snacks. We'll have like a snack
Yeah.
station available the entire weekend for healthy and unhealthy snacks. So
yeah, well, you're gonna have a ping pong tournament, like I said, and then over $5,000 in prizes. So there's a really good chance, like if you make a good project, you could probably win something. As like every hackathon, you can meet a lot of new people and learn a lot. I think I've learned more from hackathons than like any other kind of experience or anything like that. So
and also we wanted to add this in to talk about like what is the judging criteria to give you an idea of like how is your project going to be judged for the general track, which is going to have most amount of the most money is going to be in the general track. So you might want to pay attention to this. But completion is not in our judging criteria. What does that mean? It means we're not necessarily looking for your project to be fully complete. We want you to experiment. We want you to be creative. We want you to, fully flesh out your idea and, have a built MVP, but we don't need it to be working in a sense. You don't have to stress. We don't want you to come into this and then it's Sunday at 1:30 and you haven't even like finish your project. You don't have a working. This is the QR code to our full judging criteria for the coding tracks. If you're on the Zoom, if you're doing the no code tracks, this doesn't apply to you. That is separately in our hacker doc as well. But these criteria is not specifically for the no code tracks. It's just for the coding tracks. And also notice that mentor judging is entirely in person. What does that mean? And how is that different from like other hackathons that you might have experienced or will experience in the future? It means that you probably do not want to take a lot of time to flesh out your written documentation online. You want to focus a big part on the pitch. So like, what are you going to say live in person? Our mentors will not be able to review your project demos. Like if you were to make a video, the mentors will not have time for that since our judging period is just an hour long. So, and then we have like the closing ceremony, like basically right after judging at 3:30. So mentors will not be looking like on their own time at your projects until probably after prizes are awarded. So just try to focus on the live pitching, except if you're doing the autonomous track, you may want to make a video for it because they're going to be the only judging team that's going to be asynchronous remote, but you will still be live pitching for the judges doing the pinata track and the general track and whatever other tracks that you opt into, both on Major League Hacking, whether it's the beginner track, things like that. Those will all be assessed in person. The only one that won't be is the autonomous challenge.
So we can kind of go over like what you can expect with the time constraints that we have. So you might have to plan when you're going to sleep, where you're going to sleep, kind of like how that's going to happen.
If you're
going to sleep, you might not sleep. That happens a lot. And also kind of like this agile methodology, think about like what you learn in like your software engineering classes. So like, sprints, stand-ups, things like that, like how you're going to communicate with your team, how you're going to get things done in time, and kind of the order that you go about completing your design and finishing off your project. So you can't work on the code base or write any non-boilerplate code before 6 p.m. Saturday, March 29th. You can use like basic, like, create next app or whatever.
Which is an example of a boilerplate application.
You can use that kind of like pre-existing code. This is very basic, but you can't just like make the whole app and then pull up and just release it. And that's all you're doing. And MLH will review all the projects. They'll look through your GitHub repo and make sure it complies with the rules. for no code projects, if we have any inclination that you've been given the deliverable requirements before 2 p.m. Saturday, March 29th, you'll be immediately disqualified. And that's kind of that.
Hopefully that doesn't happen. Because we don't think that we'll get out. But here's what you can do beforehand. Here's what we actually want you to do beforehand. So like kind of conceptualize what your project looks like. Like what are you gonna make? Kind of spend some time thinking about that so you're not going into Saturday being like, oh no. I mean, you can do that. If you don't have enough time, don't let that deter you from participating. We think that you guys can all create a fantastic project front to back in 20 hours. Like we're confident in you guys to be able to do something. But if you can, it's an added bonus. If you want to like use a whiteboard, get out a whiteboard. What is your user workflow going to look like? Things like that. Definitely you tutorials. And then, think of questions that you might want to ask the mentors on Saturday. They'll be here on Saturday for questions and, just to chit chat with you guys. Anything you want to
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely just make sure you're thinking about kind of the type of things you want to work on. It's really easy to waste a lot of time getting bogged down and making exactly what your vision is, but you need to be flexible. You need to be able to pivot and change what you're doing if it ends up that it's not going to work out. So
I did meet someone in Denver. He's won like over 100 grand in like hackathon prizes, and he said that he keeps like a note page of like all of the hackathon project ideas. And like whenever he's going into a hackathon, he's like, which project do I want to pursue for this hackathon? And he's like, okay, I'm gonna just choose that one. I like that one, and then like kind of fleshes it out from there. So that's kind of one way you can go about doing it. And then, the final thing we have for you guys before we open it up to questions is come to our Thursday workshop. We're going to be like getting deep into the weeds of like just creating a decentralized application, an NFT gallery, something similar to what you guys might build this upcoming weekend. We're going to use Pinata. So this project, if it worked in the hackathon, it would be eligible for the Pinata challenge. We're going to be using Polygon's testnet, I think. I'm not leading it. Oh, we're not. We're gonna be switching it up. Stay tuned. It's gonna be really great. Any questions about the Midwest Block-a-Thon in general or anything? Yes.
Find inspiration for your project. What are the strengths of like blockchain technology, and like how can we come up with an idea that's kind of uses that to its full potential? Or some of the areas that is strong.
So questions is like, what is blockchain technology strong suited in for? How can we use that as inspiration to build a blockchain application?
Yeah. Blockchain strengths lie a lot in like security and verifying things and transactions, ensuring that transactions will only go through when someone does a certain thing. So definitely think about stuff like that. Peer-to-peer transactions and things of that nature. Some actual weaknesses are it's not great for doing complex calculations. It's not great for storing a large amount of data. But so you're just gonna think about that. Think about how you're gonna use it in your application. So.
And your project being a blockchain project, that doesn't mean your entire project needs to live on a blockchain. It doesn't need to be used. It doesn't need to be completely a blockchain. It just needs to like have some component of blockchain in it. So like, as we were saying, the difference between Web 2 and Web 3, your project's not going to be completely on the Web3 side using only Web3 tech. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. And I encourage everyone to go rewatch Steve Simpkins from Pinata, his workshop on what are smart contracts, because he kind of shows you the capabilities of what smart contracts do. It's more than just, the transactions back and forth. You can basically write any sort of code that can change the state of a blockchain. So, use your creative mind and like think of like, what can I use with the blockchain? Like what can change the state? How can my application work on a blockchain? So things like that, like whether it's like minting data as we did on my example and your examples as well, reviewing those. Yes.
So it was mentioned that completion is not a criteria for judging.
Mm-hmm.
Is that sort of like a test optional scenario? Like if you complete, great, but if you don't complete, no points are slashed out. Like Are you still incentivized to complete, or is the aim like ideas?
I think you want to be able to demonstrate it. You need to be able to like, because it's a live demo, so
Mhm.
you need to be able to show it working. But if you have to take shortcuts or whatever,
Yeah,
the focus should be the demo for sure.
right. And what we're saying here with this criteria is that actually we'd rather you spend your time having more of a complex project than having a complete project. Because when you think about it, if you were to have a complete project, you might lose points somewhere. So you might lose points in the innovation side and the learning and growth side if you do, well, sorry, you might lose points if you do a simple project that's complete. You might lose points in the innovation and learning and growth because you didn't learn that much and you didn't innovate that much, right? And then if you had a completed project, you might have gained points in the execution. No, sorry, if you had an incomplete project, you might slightly lose points in the execution, but gained much more points in the innovation and learning and growth. If that makes sense, yeah. Yes.
For the NFT gallery, are you guys using like MetaMask or what is that?
Yeah, the NFT gallery thing. Yes, we would ask that you're still kind of requirements for what we're going to ask you to have for and also support you if you don't have whatever kind of wallet you have on, we can help you setting up wallets. Just
Making your wallet and then getting a set or
Yeah.
a test of your wallet.
If you don't have it, it's fine. I messaged Polygon and they gave me like tests and stuff, so I can just send it directly.
I was just kidding.
Yeah. So question was just for the Zoom people that do we need to have MetaMask set up? What are the crypto wallets? So like crypto wallets is how you're going to interact with the NFT gallery. Do we need to have that set up and stuff? They're going to be sending out, our team's going to be sending out prerequisites for the NFT gallery project to kind of get that set up. We'll also be able to help you guys if you need any help setting up your crypto wallet in order to use the NFT gallery application. One question is, where can we find these videos? Can you post a link? Yes, we'll make them public on our YouTube page after we upload them. I'm gonna edit this one, take out the middle chunk, and then put it up for you guys. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I believe there's no more questions in the chat. Thank you all so much for attending. We'll get the video out and then on an email or on the Discord, I'll put the YouTube link for that. Thank you guys.